As you know, I'm a big fan of indie horror games, and in particular, I love digging into the lore within them. You can find some truly creative and terrifying stuff at times, and it's a bit of a shame that many of these games will never be as famous or well known as those from much bigger studios. So, when the devs from Senses Midnight approached me and asked me if I'd like to make a lore video from their game, well, of course I said yes. I would have gotten around to it anyway, so it seemed like a no-brainer. And here we are. Full disclosure, they provided me with a free early access copy of the game so I could make this video, as well as a look at some of their behind-the-scenes notes, but that was it. This is something I would have gotten around to even if they didn't ask me, but I'll never argue with a free copy of a game. And if you want to check the game out for yourself, you can find the link in the description. Anyway, without further ado, this week, let's dive into the fascinating lore behind an urban legend known as the Midnight Door. What exactly is it, and just how badly will it mess you up? Let's find out. First things first, the game is set in the future, taking place on October 12th, 2085, and takes place in Ikebukuro Walking Park. You play as Uesugi Kaho, and you're tasked with investigating a now infamous legend, the Midnight Door. You see, the park is going to be reopening soon, after nearly half a century of being closed due to, well, let's just say quite a few disappearances. But is it really safe to reopen the park now? What exactly is this urban legend, and is it about to rear its ugly head again? Naturally, there will be some spoilers here, so if you want to play the game completely fresh, I do recommend picking it up and playing through it before watching this video. We'll still be here when you get back. Okay, so you play as Kaho, who has been sent in by her team to uncover evidence of the Midnight Door in Ikebukuro Park. It's nighttime, so naturally there is nobody else around, leaving you free to explore and hopefully find some evidence to prove that the Midnight Door is real, and maybe, just maybe, prevent anyone else from dying because of it. And when I say free to explore, naturally that means free to run from the ghosts and other nasties that are doing their best to make you join them on the other side. But around the park, you can find newspapers and notes that will help unlock what's going on, and it's not pretty. What exactly is the Midnight Door? Well, for this one, we have to go back almost a century into the past, all the way back to 2003. One fateful night in 2003, several teenagers hanging out in Ikebukuro Park noticed that the door to one of the public toilets was oddly sealed shut. Curious, they forced their way in and found a horrifying sight awaiting them. A woman's badly decomposing body. It appeared this woman had hung herself, but even worse, centipedes had been eating her remains, and the force of the door being pushed open caused, well, her head to detach from her body. Not a pretty sight. Now, most people might feel sick and throw up or go running in terror at such a sight, but instead, the teenagers took pictures and posted them online. Because of course. Nobody was quite sure who this woman was, and so the internet dubbed her Okiku. Strangely, every single photo posted by the teens displayed the same time. 12 AM. Midnight exactly. This was the time that they opened the door. And even more terrifyingly, over the next few days, every single one of the teenagers who found and took photos of Okiku ended up disappearing. But they didn't just disappear. Their houses were infested with centipedes as well. Gross. As the internet is wont to do, however, people took an interest in this creepy dead body and the disappearance of the teenagers who found her, and a new challenge was created. The challenge was simple. Head to Ikebukuro Park at midnight and knock on the toilet door, just as the teenagers had. You then had to take a photo of yourself in front of the door to prove you went there, and then upload it to a popular image board known as Shichan. Then you would have to say, Okiku, Okiku, will you let me in? Naturally, people from all over posted these photos, and most were determined to be fake. There were, however, some people who mysteriously disappeared after sharing their photos. And just like those original teenagers who found the body of Okiku, their homes were found infested with centipedes as well. Interestingly, in these photos alone, the toilet door could be seen slightly ajar, even though it had been boarded up after Okiku's body was found. Other people even claimed that if you looked hard enough, you could see an eye hiding in the darkness behind the door, but not all agreed. So, why did the door apparently open for some, but not for others? After all, numerous people posted fake photos, yes, but numerous people actually visited the park, attempted the challenge, and then got nothing. They returned home safe and sound. Well, some argued that it perhaps had something to do with one's connection to the spirit world, and those who were closer to it, more aware of it, were more likely to open the door than those who had zero ability to sense the other side. But this was just conjecture, and the truth remained unknown. Unlike most challenges today, this one remained popular for many, many years. By 2035, well over 30 years later, 44 people in total had disappeared after visiting the Midnight Door and performing the ritual, if you will. Where had they gone, and why were those homes infested with centipedes after? The following year, 2 children also went missing after performing the ritual to open the Midnight Door, and it seemed that was the final push authorities needed to finally close the park. Internal documents confirmed the disappearances as the official reason for the park's closure, and also hinted that an exorcism was secretly held as well. Sadly, that wasn't the end of matters. 4 days after the exorcism, 3 members of the student council who attended then disappeared, and this was soon followed by the death of the priest who took part in the exorcism as well. It seemed he had hung himself, and rumours swirled that his temple was also infested with centipedes, but this was never officially confirmed. Was all of this Okiku's doing? After all, when the teenagers pushed their way into the bathroom and found her body, it was being consumed by centipedes. Now, people were disappearing after visiting that same door and asking Okiku to let them in. After which, they disappeared and their homes were found infested by centipedes. The toilet in which Okiku's body was found was demolished after the apparently unsuccessful exorcism, yet numerous workers fell ill or suffered family emergencies, and work didn't proceed quite so smoothly. In the end, the demolition was abandoned with only the door and its surrounding wall left standing, all alone in the middle of the park. A nearby shrine, all but abandoned by that point, was reinstated, in an attempt to help soothe the many spirits that had gone missing because of the nearby Midnight Door, as it was popularly known, and hopefully soothe the spirit of the vengeful Okiku at the same time. And for a time, it seemed to work. Several decades passed and nobody else disappeared. By 2084, just over 80 years after Okiku's body was first found and nearly 50 years after the park was closed, the Ikebukuro City Council got to talking about opening the park again. After all, it was prime land, and the city sure had changed a lot in the meantime. A vote was held and it was unanimously agreed to reopen the park by 2086. Renovations began the following year, and this, it seemed, was enough to re-spark interest in the ancient Midnight Door legend. Nothing ever truly dies on the internet, after all. People dug the old story up, and young folks decided it was a great time to try the old Midnight Door challenge again. They snuck into the park late at night to try the ritual, but it seemed nobody was able to successfully complete it. Good news if you didn't want to, disappear, but bad news if you were hoping for something a little supernatural to occur. Had Okiku's spirit finally been soothed? Had her curse finally faded away after all these years? That's where Kaho and her team come in, hoping to uncover evidence that the Midnight Door is not only real, but still active, and hopefully prevent any more disappearances before they take place and the park reopens to the public once again the following year. Because, of course, Okiku is still around, and Yes, not really a spoiler alert, but the Midnight Door is still active. As it was theorized long ago, not everybody disappears when they attempt the ritual, and it is, perhaps, only those with close ties to the other side who can get it to open. A few people have tried in recent times, yes, but it would appear none of them had close ties to the spirit world. But Kaho does, and she's going to be in for a rough night after attempting the ritual herself. The secret to the Midnight Door lies in two different factors that just happen to come together to create something terrifying. Okiku, the angry, vengeful woman who hung herself behind the door, and the very location itself, Ikebukuro Park. As you explore and uncover more information about not just the door, but the location itself, you can piece together just exactly what is going on here. One article from the Kowa Shimbun in particular lays out enough information to assume what's going on. The article, titled Mukare no Mori, or Forest of Centipedes, details how the location that Ikebukuro Park now sits on was once a dense, swamp-like forest that was full of heavy fog and numerous phantom centipedes that would kill and eat travelers foolish enough to enter. Ritual sacrifices apparently took place there, which may or may not have given rise to the horrifying centipedes that later took over. And there was talk of human pillars being consumed by these centipedes as well. Either way, it wasn't a pleasant place to be, and this phantom forest appears to exert its evil influence every few hundred years, even though it's no longer really a forest. So, we have a location steeped in evil since long ago. A location of potential ritualistic sacrifices and horrifying centipede monsters. Then we have Okiku, a woman full of rage who took her own life in a public toilet, now located on this same land. Her body was found being consumed by centipedes, and the teenagers who found her took photos and shared them on the internet, rather than, being horrified and calling authorities. And so, a combination of all these factors eventually resulted in what came to be known as the Midnight Door, an urban legend that claimed close to 50 souls by the time the game starts, and by the looks of it, is ready to claim even more. Can Kaho successfully escape its clutches, or will she fall victim too? As they say, only one way to find out. And that's the story behind the Midnight Door. I'll make another video on Okiku, the vengeful spirit literally behind the door, so do stay tuned for that one. But what did you guys think? Have you played the game yet? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.